Welcome back to the program. We begin in Uganda this time, where Taban Amin, a grandson of former dictator Idi Amin, has become a member of parliament for the Kibanda North constituency in the western part of the country. Mr. Amin was unopposed after his main challenger, Sam Amutiotada, lost a court petition and withdrew from a by-election race. The parliamentary seat fell vacant in July after the Court of Appeal nullified the earlier election of Mr. Amin on grounds that he had not fully complied with the electoral laws, but he is now a member of parliament for the ruling NRM headed by President Yoweri Museveni. Mr. Museveni was part of a group of Ugandan exile forces backed by Tanzanian troops who toppled his grandfather Idi Amin in 1979. Police in Zambia have released an opposition leader who was arrested last week for defaming President Edgar Lungu. Xavier Chisenshimba of the United Progressives Party was arrested on the premises of a privately owned television station where he had gone for an interview. Zambia police spokesperson Esther Nwata Katongo says after spending a week in police cells, he had now walked free and his case is discontinued. His release comes 5 days before the start of a trial of Zambia's main opposition leader, Hakainde Hichilema, who was arrested in April and charged with treason after his convoy allegedly failed to give way to President Edgar Lungu's motorcade. Meanwhile, President Lungu and Mr. Hichilema have agreed to participate in talks to address political tensions in Zambia. This comes after Commonwealth Secretary-General Patricia Scotland held a meeting with both men on her visit to Zambia. She says they agreed to a process of dialogue to prepare for reforms ahead of the 2021 elections. The two leaders have been at loggerheads since last year when Mr. Lungu won a closely contested presidential election. The UN Security Council has again called attention to worsening famine situations in Yemen, Somalia, South Sudan and northeast Nigeria, and wants warring parties to consider allowing humanitarian aid access and donations to save as many as 20 million people. During its meeting on Wednesday, a statement drafted by Sweden expressed deep concerns that ongoing conflicts and violence have devastating humanitarian consequences and hinder an effective humanitarian response in short, medium and long-term efforts, and therefore a major cause of famine in these four countries. Back in February, the UN had appealed for $4.9 billion to combat what it calls the largest humanitarian crisis since the body was formed more than 70 years ago. But according to spokesperson Stephanie Jurek, only about half of that amount has been received.
As you know, more than 20 million people in those areas are experiencing famine or at the risk of famine. To date, we have received $2.5 billion, or about 51% of the $4.9 billion we have appealed for urgently providing life-saving assistance to people in those areas.
Many migrants are still leaving Africa for Europe via the Mediterranean Sea, but a new route is becoming popular, and that's the Sahara Desert, which is even more dangerous. But those plying this route, it appears, are trying to avoid being detected, which no way makes the journey any more pleasant.
Daniel knows well the dangers of the route to Libya. The 26-year-old left his homeland, Cameroon, earlier this year with his twin brother and uncle, aiming to reach Libya, then Europe, to start a new life. But for the trio, the trip went wrong, as they fell into the hands of ruthless smugglers who demanded that they pay an extra $1,100 per person. They didn't have the money, and that became their offense. They were thrown into one of Libya's informal detention centers and beaten with weapons. Daniel was then taken back to neighboring Niger, where he was bound and maltreated by his Libyan captors, while his family remained hostage across the border. 2 months later, he was released but had no money to pay the ransom for his brother's release. Daniel's harrowing journey left him in the Nigerian city of Agadez, a hub known for trading gold and salt. The city on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert, now transformed to a notorious center where guns, drugs, and even people are sold. According to reports, migration service providers in Agadez may soon run out of business, as a law is already in place to checkmate their activities.
This law puts people in a situation where they are going to become poor. They will feel denied, and after a certain time, they will become difficult to control, and that, in fact, is what concerns us.
No data exists for the number of deaths in the vast and unpoliced Sahara.
Well, speaking of migrants, 29 of them, mostly teenagers, were deliberately drowned by a people smuggler in Yemen. The IOM says they were among the 120 deliberately pushed from a boat into the sea by the smuggler, who apparently feared arrest. 27 of them, however, survived and were found on a beach by the agency on a routine patrol. Chief of the IOM mission in Yemen, Lauren de Burke, says the survivors told her colleagues on the beach that the smuggler pushed them to the sea when he saw some authority types near the coast. Back on dry land, the Zimbabwe government has announced plans to build a university dedicated to President Robert Mugabe. It's estimated to cost a whopping $1 billion and is regarded as a fitting tribute to the 93-year-old president's commitment to education and exemplary leadership. It's a clear contrast, however, to what's going on in Zimbabwe itself. Millions of people are in need of food aid due to drought, and the country, once known as the breadbasket of southern Africa, has inflation reaching sky high, and many Zimbabweans already struggle to pay for education as well as public services and infrastructure like roads and hospitals. According to the media in Zimbabwe, President Mugabe has earned 7 degrees and 11 honorary degrees. He is a trained teacher and since coming to power in 1980 has increased the provision of state education to the previously disadvantaged black majority. Over now in Côte d'Ivoire, 20 people escaped custody after having assaulted police officers at the courthouse in the capital, Abidjan. It's the latest in a series of attacks on police in the country. A justice official said 10 prisoners and another 10 people who had been summoned to court escaped on Tuesday and were still at large as at yesterday. In the last few weeks, unidentified gunmen have staged multiple raids on police stations and security units, stealing weapons and in one case killing an officer. State prosecutor Christophe Adu said 2 of the prisoners seized weapons from the police, accompanying them as they arrived at the courthouse, allowing all detainees to escape. That's Network Africa. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers.